I've never told this story to anyone except the police, and even then, I left things out. But it's been 2 years now, and I still wake up at 4:15 a.m., drenched in cold sweat, grabbing at my ankle like it's on fire. So maybe writing it down will help, or maybe it'll make it worse. We'll see. It was late November and Mia had this idea. She always had these ideas, to camp on an old fire watch tower deep in Ocala National Forest. She'd found it on some obscure hiking forum. A wooden platform 60 feet up, rusted metal roof. Ladder still intact. No bugs, no bears. Best sunrise in Florida, she said. I was a graphic designer who spent 10 hours a day in front of a screen. She was a fitness trainer who could outrun me backwards. I said yes because I was in love and because I thought it would be just another Instagram-worthy adventure. We parked my white Toyota 4Runner where the dirt road ended, about a mile from the tower. I remember checking my phone, no signal obviously, and tossing it into the glove box. Mia laughed. "You won't need it, city boy." I grabbed my North Face sleeping bag, a Petzl headlamp, a Gerber knife I'd never used for anything serious, and a 6-pack of craft beer we planned to drink at sunset. The air was cool and damp, smelling of pine needles and rotting leaves. Through the trees, the tower looked like a skeletal finger pointing at a starless sky. The ladder had 12 rungs, rough-hewn 2x4s bolted to the side of the platform. I tested the first few, solid. We climbed up, set our gear on the platform, and sat with our legs dangling over the edge. The view was all black silhouettes of longleaf pines fading into nothing. Mia pulled out a bag of trail mix, I opened a beer, and we clinked cans. "See?" she said. "Perfect." I remember thinking, this is the kind of night you tell your kids about. Around midnight, we zipped into our sleeping bags side by side, watching the stars blink through gaps in the rusted roof. I fell asleep to the sound of her breathing, the forest so quiet you could hear your own blood moving. I woke up thirsty, the kind of thirsty where your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. I fumbled for my headlamp. 4:14 a.m. The time burned into my skull forever. Mia was asleep, one arm thrown over her face. I whispered I was going down for water, but she didn't stir. The ladder felt cold and rough under my hands. Headlamp beam slicing down, I descended carefully, counting rungs by habit. 1, 2, 3. My right foot reached for the fourth and met nothing. I swung my light lower, and my brain refused to process what I was seeing. The bottom 3 rungs were gone. Not rotted, not cracked. Gone. Fresh splinters gleamed white in the darkness, and the wood below was scarred with deep, deliberate prying marks, like someone had taken a crowbar to it. I hung there, heart hammering against my ribs, legs dangling 10 feet above the ground. "Mia," I hissed, but my voice came out thin and useless. The platform was too high for her to hear a whisper. I looked down again, dirt, pine straw, and something else. A small pile of cigarette butts crushed into the earth. I hadn't seen those earlier. I hadn't smelled any smoke. But now dangling there, I caught it. Stale tobacco and something sour like old sweat. My arms started trembling. I couldn't pull myself back up. I'm not a climber. My upper body strength was pathetic. The only way was down. I tried to calculate the drop, bent my knees as best I could, and let go. The landing wasn't clean. My left ankle rolled sideways with a wet, grinding pop I felt more than heard. Pain exploded up my leg, white-hot and nauseating. I crumpled, biting my tongue to keep from screaming, and then I did scream anyway, a strangled animal noise that cut through the silence. Above me, Mia's headlamp flickered on. "Leo! Leo!" I lay on my side, clutching my leg. The ankle was already swelling, foot angled wrong. "The ladder," I gasped. Someone took the rungs. Stay up there. Don't come down." She started crying, shouting questions I couldn't answer. I heard her pacing on the platform, the old wood groaning, and then from somewhere in the darkness beyond my headlamp's reach, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, moving through dry leaves. Not a deer. Deer don't walk like that. Two-legged, pausing, then another step, closer. I fumbled for my Gerber, flicked it open with shaking hands. The blade looked pathetically small. "Who's there?" I yelled, voice cracking. "I've got a knife." The footsteps stopped. For a long moment, nothing but my own ragged breathing and Mia's muffled sobs. Then the steps resumed, circling wide around the base of the tower, just outside the cone of my light. I caught glimpses of movement, a tall shape, broad-shouldered, moving with a patient, unhurried gait. It didn't rush me, it didn't speak, it just walked a slow perimeter, like a predator deciding if I was worth the trouble. I don't know how long that went on, 10 minutes, maybe an hour. Eventually the footsteps retreated, fading into the direction of the denser brush. But I knew it hadn't left. It was just waiting. Mia threw down her sleeping bag, told me to cover myself. I pulled it over my shaking body, knife still clenched in my fist, and stared at the black wall of trees until my eyes burned. Dawn came gray and slow. Mist crawled up from the low ground, thick as soup, cutting visibility to maybe 20 feet. I hadn't slept, hadn't moved except to drag myself a few inches closer to the tower's base. My ankle was a purple ruin. Mia had gone quiet, probably in shock. And then I saw him. A man stepped out of the fog, about 30 feet away. He was big, 6'2" at least, wearing a stained canvas jacket and jeans, work boots crusted with mud. His hair was lank and dark, his beard patchy. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a guy you'd see pumping gas at a rural station. But his eyes were wrong. Empty, flat, the way a dead fish stares at nothing. He walked to within 10 feet of me, stopped, and sat down cross-legged in the dirt. Like we were old friends sharing a campfire. He pulled out a pack of Marlboro Reds, tapped one out, lit it with a Zippo I didn't recognize. He didn't offer me one. He just sat there smoking, watching me. Mia's voice came from above, small and terrified. "Leo, who is that?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up completely. The man took a long drag, exhaled through his nose and smiled. "You're probably wondering about the rungs," he said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, with a faint southern drawl. "I took 'em off, round about 2 in the morning, had a crowbar in my pack. Didn't figure you'd climb down before sunup, but you surprised me." He paused, flicked ash onto the ground. "Shame about your leg. That looks bad." I found my voice, though it came out a rasping whisper. "Why?" He tilted his head, genuinely puzzled by the question. "Why? So you wouldn't leave, of course. Wanted to meet you proper. Daylight's better for introductions. Don't you think?" He gestured up at the platform. "Your girl up there, she's pretty. I watched you two climb up yesterday. Could have done it then, but I like to be patient. Patience is important." My mind was screaming 1,000 things, but all I said was, "Please, let us go." He shook his head slowly, still smiling. "Ain't about letting. It's about talking. I don't get many visitors. Figured you'd stay a while. But then you had to go and break your leg, and now it's all complicated. I don't much like complications." He stood up, grinding the cigarette under his boot. I braced for him to come closer, but he just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking up at Mia. "Morning, miss," he called. "Don't be scared. Your fella down here's a little broken, but he's breathing. You got a rope?" "No." Shame. Could have made this easier. Then he did the strangest thing. He walked over to where he'd stashed the missing rungs, 3 lengths of splintered wood, stacked neatly behind a pine. He picked them up one by one and laid them in a row at the base of the ladder, like a builder presenting his materials. "There," he said. "When I'm done, you can have them back. But we talk first." He returned to his spot and sat down again. This time, he pulled out a hunting knife, a big fixed-blade buck with a gut hook, and started cleaning his nails with it. "I'm Kevin," he said, "and you're Leo. I heard her say it. Nice to meet you, Leo. Let's chat." I didn't chat. I did the only thing I could. I screamed at Mia to climb down the tower's maintenance side. The old metal ladder bolted to the back, which she'd noticed earlier, but I'd dismissed because it was rusted to hell. "Go! Get to the car! Call for help!" I heard her scrambling, crying, her feet clanging on metal. Kevin watched her with mild interest but didn't move. "She won't get far," he said. "Car's a mile off. She's barefoot. I got all day." He looked at me. "You, on the other hand, you're not going anywhere." But Mia did get far. She climbed down, landed in a crouch, and bolted into the fog. Kevin sighed, stood up, and stretched. "Well, this isn't how I imagined it," he muttered almost to himself. He glanced at me one last time. "You're lucky, Leo. I don't like changing plans. Messes with my head, but I'll be around. Maybe we'll finish this another time." He walked away into the mist, in the opposite direction from Mia. I lay there shivering, the pile of rungs mocking me. 30 minutes later, though it felt like a lifetime, Mia came back. She'd found the car, driven it as close as she could, then ran the rest of the way on bloody feet. She dragged me half a mile through the underbrush, sobbing and swearing, while I blacked out from the pain. The last thing I remember before the hospital was her saying, "I called 911. They're coming. Don't leave me, Leo. Don't you dare leave me." The police searched the area. They found the missing rungs, exactly where Kevin had left them. They found no cigarette butts, no footprints, no trace of a campsite or a man matching his description. One deputy suggested the rungs might have fallen on their own, old wood, wet rot, and I'd hallucinated the rest from shock and blood loss. But I saw his eyes when he said it. He didn't believe it either. Mia stayed with me through 3 months of surgeries and physical therapy, but something between us broke that night. I started waking up screaming, checking the locks, refusing to even drive past a tree line. She needed the outdoors like air, and I'd become terrified of open spaces. We split amicably 6 months later. I moved into a high-rise apartment in downtown Tampa, as far from the forest as I could get. I still sleep with the lights on. Here's the thing I never told anyone, not even Mia. When the police returned my gear from the platform, I found something in my sleeping bag stuff sack, a Zippo lighter, scratched with the letter K. I'd never seen it before. I threw it into a dumpster behind my building and watched the garbage truck take it away. But sometimes late at night, I smell stale cigarette smoke in my apartment, drifting from no particular direction. And I hear a voice in my head, calm and patient. "Maybe we'll finish this another time." I don't know who Kevin was. I don't know why he let us go. And I don't know if he's still out there, waiting for his next visitors. But I do know one thing for sure. I'm never setting foot in the woods again. The city may be loud and ugly, but at least it has witnesses. I've never told this story in full. Not to the cops, not to my therapist, not even to the guys who were there that night. We agreed we'd put it behind us, but 2 years later, I still wake up at 3:45 a.m. with my heart punching against my ribs. And the thing is, I still have the rope. It's sitting in a shoebox at the back of my closet, and I don't know how it got into my trunk. This happened in late October, up in Washington State, a place called Graves Creek. 5 of us, me, Jake, Sarah, Tom, and Lisa, drove out for what was supposed to be a quick day hike. We'd done the same loop the previous spring, a 12-mile horseshoe that skirted a swamp the locals called Dead Man's Hollow. Jake, our de facto leader, said we'd be back at the car by 8. We started at 2. I remember thinking, plenty of time. That was my first mistake. We took my Subaru Outback, parked it at a dirt pull-off where the gravel ended, and hit the trail in decent spirits. The sky was already the color of old dishwater, but we had headlamps, Petzolactic cores, fresh batteries, and a Garmin InReach Mini for emergencies. No cell signal from the moment we turned off the highway, but that was part of the appeal. I had a Spyderco Tenacious clipped to my pocket, mostly for cutting cheese and paracord, not because I thought I'd need it. Jake carried a compass and a paper map, which he handled like a holy text. The hike out was fine. Leaves rotting underfoot, that sweet smell of decay, a few ravens croaking somewhere above the fog. We crossed the wooden bridge over the creek, snapped photos, laughed at Tom's dumb jokes about swamp monsters. Sarah kept checking her watch. She was the one who actually paid attention to daylight. By 5, the light had soured into a dim gray, and Jake decided we should cut the loop short and double back the way we came. Nobody argued. The fog was rising from the hollows, thick as cotton stuffing. By 6:30, we were deep in darkness. Our headlamps cut cones of white mist, and the trail looked different at night, all roots and sudden shadows. But we knew this path. We'd walked it in spring. Jake pointed out landmarks, his voice calm. Tom made a joke about Blair Witch and we laughed, but the sound died fast, swallowed by the trees. I think looking back, that's when I should have felt it. The quiet. No wind, no birds, not even the drip of water from the branches. Just the crunch of our boots and our own breathing. Around 10:15, maybe a mile and a half from the car, my light hit something wrong. The trail was supposed to be clear, but instead I saw a tangled wall of pine trunks blocking the path. Freshly cut saplings, no thicker than my forearm, laid crosswise like a giant game of pickup sticks. The ends were pale, oozing resin, and they smelled sharp. Sap and chainsaw oil, maybe. Jake stopped dead. What the hell? Tom pushed forward and kicked one of the branches. Forest Service doing trail maintenance? At night? Without signs? Sarah's voice was tight. She'd been an ER nurse for 6 years. She didn't spook easily, but I saw her fingers clench around the strap of her pack. I tried to be the rational one. Maybe a local landowner? Some guy sick of hikers? We squeezed past it, stepping into the wet ferns on the left side of the trail. I remember the squelch of mud sucking at my boots and the way my headlamp beam caught the mist, turning it into a white wall. We walked on, but nobody spoke. The jokes had died. Even Tom was quiet, and that scared me more than anything. About 100 meters further, I counted my steps, a nervous habit. We hit a second barrier. This one was bigger, thicker logs, still with their bark bleeding, crisscrossed and wedged between 2 old-growth cedars. And stapled to the top log, flapping in a non-existent breeze, was a piece of paper. Block letters in black marker. Turn back now. I heard Lisa's breath catch. She pointed a trembling finger at the note. That's not Forest Service. Jake took the paper down carefully, examined it. The staples were new, bright metal. The ink smelled faintly chemical. "Someone put this up tonight," he said, his voice too level, "while we were out." Then we heard it, a metallic clank, far off in the dark, like someone had struck a rock with a crowbar. Then another and a third. 3 knocks. Deliberate. It came from the south, deeper in the swamp. "Okay," Tom said, backing up. That's a person. Could be a ranger." "Rangers don't use crowbars and leave death threats," Sarah snapped. She pulled out her phone. No signal, but she tried 911 anyway. Nothing. I checked the Garmin. The SOS button was there, a little orange tab. My thumb hovered over it. "If we hit it, they send a helicopter," I said. "For what?" Jake shook his head. "We're not injured. They'll call it a false alarm. We just need to get to the car." The problem was, the trail ahead was completely blocked, and the only way around was to drop down into the swamp. Dead Man's Hollow, and hope we could cut back to the road. Jake unfolded his map, tilting his headlamp. The swamp was marked with a dotted blue line, a seasonal marsh. "If we keep to the eastern edge, we'll hit the gravel road in half a mile. It'll be wet, but we can do it." I didn't like it. I'd heard stories about that swamp. A hunter went missing there in '08. They found his boot, but not his leg. But what choice did we have? We started down the slope, away from the blocked trail, into the bog. The ground softened almost immediately. Water seeped over the tops of my boots, freezing. The fog was thicker here, rising off the black water in lazy curls. Our headlamps reflected off the surface, turning the swamp into a hall of mirrors. Every tree root looked like an arm, every stump a crouching figure. Then Lisa whispered, "I saw someone." We all froze. She was pointing at a cluster of alders about 40 feet to our right. Between those trees, a man. He ducked when I looked. Jake swept his light. Nothing. But then we all heard it. Footsteps. Not deer steps, not rabbit hops. Heavy, two-legged footsteps crackling through the dry leaves above us, on the ridge, moving parallel to our path. They stopped when we stopped. "They're hurting us," I said, and my voice came out like a stranger's. "They blocked the trail to push us down here, into the swamp." Nobody answered because we all knew it was true. Tom was breathing fast, his jokes long gone. Sarah had her hands up, ready to fight or run. Jake pulled out his knife, a little Benchmade, and I remember thinking how useless it looked against whatever was out there. Then we saw the footprint, a single boot print in the mud, right at the edge of a tussock of grass. It was huge, size 14 at least, with a deep tread that had pressed water up around its edges. And it was new, fresh enough that the water hadn't filled it yet. "We need to run," Lisa said. "Through the swamp?" Jake's voice cracked. "We'll break our ankles." A scream cut through the night. It wasn't any animal I've ever heard. Not a fox, not an owl. It was high and wet and human-sounding, and it came from the direction we'd just left. Then another metallic clank, closer now. I turned my headlamp back toward the ridge, and that's when I saw them. 2 men, big, broad shoulders filling dark work jackets. They stood just at the edge of the tree line, no more than 50 feet away, and they were absolutely silent. Each held a crowbar, one resting it on his shoulder like a baseball bat. The beam of my light caught the steel, made it gleam. I couldn't see their faces. Baseball caps pulled low, maybe masks. But I saw one of them tilt his head, like he was curious. Nobody spoke. Not them, not us. The moment stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then Tom screamed, "Go! Go!" We went. I grabbed Sarah's arm, and we plunged straight into the bog. The water hit my thighs so cold it burned. Lily pads and rotting logs sucked at my legs. Lisa was crying, splashing beside us. I heard a heavy thud behind me and a grunt, Tom's grunt, and I glanced back just in time to see him stumble, one of the men already on him. The crowbar came down. Tom yelled, a ragged sound that turned into a gurgle, and I thought, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. But Jake was pulling him up, screaming at him to move. The men didn't chase us into the water. They just stood on the bank watching. I saw one of them raise a flashlight, not a headlamp, a big mag light, and sweep it slowly across the surface, like he was counting us. We crashed through the reeds, slipping, falling, hauling each other up. Every breath was a knife. My headlamp flickered, smeared with mud, and I could barely see. I kept thinking, this is how we die, drowned in a swamp in the dark. Then my boots hit solid ground, a gravel berm, the old road. Sarah collapsed next to me, coughing. Lisa was hyperventilating, but she was there. Jake came last, dragging Tom, whose left arm hung at a sick angle, his jacket dark with blood. The parking lot was 100 yards ahead. My Subaru sat alone under the fog, windows gleaming. I fumbled the keys from my pocket, dropped them, nearly screamed. Sarah picked them up and jammed the fob. The lights blinked. We threw ourselves inside. I cranked the engine, shoved it into drive, and tore out of there, gravel spraying. In the rearview mirror, I saw a single figure step onto the road. He just stood there, crowbar hanging at his side, and watched us go. I floored it. The forest whipped past, branches smacking the windshield, and I didn't slow down until we hit the highway 20 minutes later, covered in mud and blood and swamp stink. At the hospital, Tom got 36 stitches and a fractured scapula. Lisa needed sedation. I sat in a plastic chair, still shaking, and tried to tell the sheriff what happened. They went out the next morning with dogs. They found nothing. No barricades, no footprints, no note, just undisturbed trail and quiet water. The ranger said that part of the loop wasn't scheduled for any maintenance and hadn't been touched in months. He also mentioned, almost casually, that Dead Man's Hollow had a reputation. A few folks gone missing over the years, never found. I drove home 2 days later. When I opened the trunk to unpack my muddy gear, I found it lying on top of my sleeping bag. A piece of rope, about 18 inches long, tied into a perfect hangman's noose. My blood went to ice. I hadn't put it there. None of my friends had. The knot was tight, professional, the rope still damp and smelling of swamp water. I stood in my driveway for a long time, holding it, looking at the trees at the edge of my yard. I still have that rope. I've never been camping again. I bought a pistol and I keep it in the glove box, even on grocery runs. I check my trunk every time I get in the car, and I lock my bedroom door at night, which drives my girlfriend crazy. The guys and I drifted apart. Too many memories, too many things we couldn't say out loud. Tom's shoulder healed, but he's not the same. Neither am I. The cops closed the case. No evidence, no suspects. I told them about the men, the crowbars, the blocked path. They nodded and wrote it down. But I know what I saw. I know that those barriers were built for us, that we were meant to go into that swamp. What I don't know is why, who they were, how they vanished without a trace, why they left that rope in my trunk. Sometimes at 3:45 a.m., I still hear that metallic clank in my head, 3 sharp knocks on the dark, and I wonder if we'd stayed, if we'd tried to fight, if I'd hit that SOS button, would it have mattered? I don't have an answer. I don't think I ever will.